But just giving my thoughts on Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz Jr. Huge upset. Fortunate enough that I was able to check it out live on DAZN at the time. And excellent fight. Excellent performance by Andy Ruiz Jr. Hats off to him. Great stuff. Showed real hand speed. Showed great killer instincts. And also didn't rush it at the same time. What I think will get lost a lot is in round 3 where we had the knockdowns, when it started, it was Ruiz getting knocked down first. He's the one that had to climb off the canvas, then knock down Anthony Joshua twice in the same round, and that was kind of the beginning of the end, the first 2 of 4 knockdowns in this fight. What did we learn, really? Well, Ruiz had real speed, real aggression. He looked like a midget. The guy is 6'2" and looked tiny next to Joshua, but showed a ton of heart, walked through some good punches, stayed consistent with his offense, good combinations, and he never let Joshua off the hook. And I've said a million times in MMA, kickboxing, boxing, every combat sport, finishing an opponent is an instinct, not a skill necessarily. There are some very skilled, outstanding fighters in combat sports who aren't great finishers just because it's not the nature of their instincts. They don't know exactly when to give it all to get the big reward. Risk versus reward, knowing that balance makes someone a great finisher. And I liked Ruiz's finishing instincts. I liked his ability to go for it. I liked his ability to stay in the pocket when he needed to and finish off a hurt guy. Was Joshua's chin a problem? There are now a lot of rumors or statements, I don't know, that he was KO'd in sparring leading up to this. I've heard all kinds of stuff after somebody loses. And my thought is always, if it's that bad, don't fight. If you got knocked out the week before in sparring and you called the promoter and go, dude, he got knocked out, he shouldn't be fighting and not fight. I respect that completely. I respect it completely. Hey, my arm's messed up, I can't fight. Rather than fighting, losing, and then we hear about every injury under the sun. The moment you step in there and decide it's time to go, everything before that you have to leave behind. Everything before, all the excuses, everything is out the window. The time when you could have utilized that to not fight and be honest and say, hey, I'm hurt, this, that's wrong. So I always take, I don't say with a grain of salt, injuries after a fight, but you should have brought it up before then. That time is gone. As soon as you step to the line in a race, as soon as you stepped into the octagon in MMA, as soon as you step to the ring in boxing, everything before that is, oh, well, it happened, but I got to fight. I chose to be here. You're an adult. You chose to be here. Any excuse leading up to that is exactly that. Forget it. Leave it in the past. So his chin, God, it's interesting in that, is his chin a problem? Those were good shots. Those were good punches by Ruiz. There weren't any where I went, that's kind of questionable. I'm surprised he went down with that. They were good combinations. He never let him. There wasn't any one punch that really made him go loopy. It was the ability to put him together where he was kind of off balance. The first shots that knocked him down were around the ear, which your balance just completely goes. As soon as you get the head going this way, it's really hard to get up after that. It's really hard to stay on your feet. So is it a chin issue? Maybe, but I thought Ruiz landed solid punches. There weren't any where I went, I don't know how many heavyweights go down with that. I didn't feel that way. I thought they were good punches. The end of the fight. Probably the worst way you can lose in boxing is on your feet looking at the referee. Because it seemed to a lot of people, to me, that Joshua could physically have kept going. He was on his feet. He seemed at least aware of where he was and what was going on. And if you talk to real boxing referees, which I have, they always say a fighter that doesn't want to keep going will go, what? And pretend to not understand you. And then you stop the fight and they go, what? I'm fine. Everything's great. But they want out. I kind of got that feeling with Joshua. He's looking at his corner, turning his back, and seemed a little more confused than I thought the action of the fight would lead me to believe. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know whether or not. Only he knows if he could have physically continued. But losing in boxing on your feet, standing up, looking at the referee, where all you had to do was walk forward or say, yeah, and you didn't, it's not good for your career. It's not good in the eyes of the fans. You gave up. You just didn't want to keep going, which I understand with being knocked down 4 times, he didn't want to keep going. But you got the feeling he physically could have and didn't. Will that haunt him? Yes. This whole thing, I'll talk about it in a minute, but huge upset. It's always fun to watch the huge upset. But this is a fight that will haunt Anthony Joshua perhaps the rest of his career. We'll see what it costs him moving forward. He's going to have a rematch with Ruiz. Might lose that, and that's it. Of course, if he wins the rematch, maybe he can still get his career back on track. But I'll talk about that in a minute. But the nuts and bolts of the fight, Ruiz looked great. And I think one of the things that was missing with a lot of people's assessment of Ruiz is this got a real amateur background. Over 100 amateur fights. I think his only 5 losses, I think, if I remember correctly. But Olympic caliber boxer in Mexico. He had real technical skills. And I saw the fundamentals as he was fighting. Hands high, good combinations, decent footwork. He's not the fastest guy in the world when it comes to his footwork, but good hand speed, good awareness, no big gaps defensively. I didn't see those he's just a gigantic brawler kind of fighter in a division right now that's kind of full of those guys. He doesn't really fit that mold. He's a nice boxer, puncher, real tight. I liked everything I saw. What I didn't like from Joshua defensively, and I tweeted about this after the fight, he keeps his lead hand very, very low, and some fighters just do that, and that's fine stylistically. James Toney, low lead hand. Floyd Mayweather, low lead hand. B-Hop, sometimes low lead hand. But when you start eating punches the way Joshua was eating punches, you have to change things up, and I didn't see those defensive adjustments. The fighters I just mentioned, James Toney, B-Hop, Floyd Mayweather, when they get hit with something, they generally don't get hit with it again. They make those adjustments defensively so they don't have to deal with that vulnerability anymore. I didn't see any adjustments from Joshua. He's getting hit with punches in tight, in close, a lot of them right hands over the top of that lazy lead jab hand, and never brought it up, never started moving his head a bit more, didn't show any more footwork. A bad sign to me, and this is across the board in combat sports, is whatever works in the first round shouldn't work in the last round. Whether it's in MMA, kickboxing, boxing, doesn't matter. The punches that were working, especially in round 3, that knocked Joshua down, were working at the end of the fight too. He wasn't adjusting like a great heavyweight, like a great boxer would. He didn't do that. So I found that troubling as well. Post-fight, the most shocking thing to me, post-fight, Ruiz won, good for him, outstanding upset, gotta love the guy's heart, real warrior. Joshua didn't seem upset that he lost. It didn't seem to bother him or bug him. And I understand being gracious to your opponent and being gracious in defeat and all these things. I didn't mind that. I didn't mind him praising Ruiz, which he should have done, and it was great to see that. There wasn't that emotional, I'm really disappointed I lost. Now, I do a podcast every week, our MMA show with Ryan Moody. That's coming out soon. We did one on this fight. And we kind of had a strong back and forth because he really liked that Joshua didn't seem upset. I didn't like it because if you look at all the all-time greats in any sport, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, they don't walk off the court or off the field in a big game they lost and look like, oh, well, they're pissed at themselves. They're not trashing their opponents. They're not, throwing a chair onto the court, okay? But my point is, the all-time greats, the champions in any sport, boxing, combat sports, non-combat sports, when they lose, especially on a big stage, championship fight, debut in the United States, the fact that he wasn't more upset with himself kind of troubled me a little bit. Recently, Rose Namajunas, losing to Jessica Andrade, she did. It seemed like a burden was lifted off her shoulders. You have to really want that burden of being a champion or greatness in order to be great. You have to really want that. You have to really care about being champ. And Joshua, I liked it, of course, that he was complimenting his opponent and, hey, it's your night and all this. I love that. But there didn't seem to be that emotional, I lost my title. I expected a little devastation. And the fact that I saw almost none bugs me, combined with the way he lost, where it seemed like he kept going and didn't want to. That combination is troubling, where you have to convince me, A, you have to win a rematch with Ruiz, and if you win that, assuming there's no rubber match, we don't know, that you're going to beat the Tyson Furies, you're going to beat the Deontay Wilders, you're going to beat the best in the division. I didn't see that hunger, really. And part of that hunger is you lose and you're fucking mad, man. You want it back. I'm going to beat this guy. Your night, I'm really disappointed in myself. I didn't see that. And that was a little troubling to me. So the post-fight, as much as I liked seeing him be complimentary of Ruiz and there wasn't any trash talk or anything like that, he didn't make any excuses, and that's great. But I also didn't see that real fire. That real fire. And I remember a prime Michael Jordan walking off the court, especially in a playoff loss, and just teeth grinding, man. This isn't happening again to me. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of that from Joshua. Now, I did a SiriusXM show with RJ Clifford last week, and we talked about this fight. And some people, no one talked to me about it, but RJ got some tweets about, oh yeah, I told you so, because we were all kind of like, why are we watching this fight? This isn't the fight we wanted. This is another like mismatch in boxing. We want to see Fury. We want to see Wilder. We want to see Joshua. We want to see those guys fight each other. The best fighting the best. This, although a great upset, wasn't the best fighting the best. And I want to make something very, very clear. It wasn't about Ruiz Jr. It wasn't about necessarily this particular fight. It's the big upset has always been the carrot and the stick for bad matchmaking. This isn't a competitive fight on paper, but anything can happen. You might see the next Tyson Douglas. But with great matchmaking, when the best are fighting the best, there is no big upset because they're evenly matched. And so what I am worried about is, in this case, for example, the Ruiz fight, that was the big selling point. It's, we might see a huge upset. That hardly ever happens. It just doesn't happen that much. And so I want to see the best fight the best, where the selling point isn't you might see a big upset. So it isn't a knock on Ruiz, or Ruiz didn't have a chance or any of that stuff. This isn't the fight that I wanted to see. We want to see him versus Wilder. We want to see him versus Fury. We want to see those fights. And this was kind of a placeholder that didn't work out well for Joshua, obviously. But the fact that we didn't get the fight we wanted, and we got this instead, ended up being a great upset. That's wonderful. But still, we didn't get the fight we wanted. Now we may never get it. And that's the thing that troubles me right now about boxing is Errol Spence Jr. should be fighting Terrence Crawford. That's the fight everybody wants to see. Anything Errol Spence Jr. does, and he's taking on Sean Porter, who's a very tough fighter, and he might lose, but that's still not the fight we wanted to see. We want to see the best fight the best. Anything other than that, whether it's Ruiz or anybody else, I'm going to be critical of. Whether there's an upset, and people can say, I told you so, but I'm not saying you won't get a great fight. You never know if you're going to get a great fight. It's the fight we want to see is the best versus the best. Anything other than that is going to be a disappointment. No matter how the fight works out, we want those fights. And that's the difficulty with boxing right now, is these camps not willing to make those big fights. And every time there's an upset like this, the problem is, on one side, look, you got to watch these fights because you never know what's going to happen. Yeah, but I want to see this one. And so I hope it's not another carrot and stick situation where the Ruiz upset of Joshua allows promoters to go, hey, see my guy fight this guy who is a huge underdog, but then we might see a huge upset. I want to see the best fight the best. And so the other thing that I'm hoping comes out of this, what I don't hope is more carrots and sticks. What I do hope happens is promoters go, look, my guy can lose to anybody anyway. Might as well make the big fight. That the tune-up fight or the showcase fight, my guy can lose that. So make the Mega Millions fight while you can. And I tweeted about that as soon as it happened. I was like, look, you got to make the big fights right now when it's hot, because that tune-up fight on the way, your guy can stumble and you can lose millions and millions of dollars. And so got to remember, Buster Douglas was a tune-up before Evander Holyfield. They were having trouble making that fight, and and I think a rib injury the first time. And then, guess what? Buster Douglas beat Tyson, and then that was it. And so we never saw a prime Evander Holyfield versus a prime Mike Tyson. That's a shame. People comparing these two finishes, Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson, and then Ruiz versus Joshua, two reasons that I completely disagree. It's a huge upset. The reason Tyson Douglas is bigger, there are many, many sides to it. The first one is Mike Tyson was a crossover star. He was a celebrity. He was just as big, if you remember the late 80s, which I do, Magic Johnson, any baseball player you can think of, any football player you can think of, Joe Montana, Mike Tyson was that big. Mike Tyson was a crossover. The guy at 7-Eleven knew Mike Tyson on sight. Okay, Anthony Joshua, most casual, not even casual fans, most regular people wouldn't spot Anthony Joshua walking down the street. They wouldn't know who that was. Mike Tyson could not walk down the street in 1990 and you didn't know who he was. It was just impossible. Mike Tyson, right now, if I said who's the best heavyweight in the world before Saturday, you would have said, some people would have said Anthony Joshua, some people would have said Tyson Fury, some people would have said Deontay Wilder. Mike Tyson in 1990, there was no one else. There was no, maybe this guy. It was Mike Tyson and nobody. Mike Tyson was considered invincible. He was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, baddest man on the planet. That was it. There were no other names at the top. It was just Mike Tyson. The dude was considered invincible. And Buster Douglas kind of came out of nowhere and destroyed him in a fight that, the Ruiz fight, as much of an upset as it was much more on the public's radar than Douglas Tyson. Douglas Tyson was fought in Tokyo because no one in the U.S. would pay for it. This fight was the Ruiz fight, and Anthony Joshua's debut in the United States was a big deal. This was literally a bump in the road for Mike Tyson. No one thought anything about it. I remember at the time, who's Buster Douglas? No one thought anything about this fight. So this fight, Ruiz-Joshua, although a huge upset, was much bigger in the mind of the public than Douglas Tyson was. Tyson was seen as a much better fighter, the best of his era at the time, than Joshua is now, period. So those are the reasons I don't put them on the same level. The other one, Rahman Lewis, that was a huge upset. That was huge as well. I remember that one. But that's why I don't put Joshua Ruiz above Tyson Douglas, because of those factors. Tyson was invincible in the mind of most boxing fans at this point in his career. Anyway, so that's why I don't put him on the same level. But what I'm hoping is the boxing promoters learn from this, that our guy can lose at any time to anyone, anything can happen. Let's give the fans what we want while we can, because you never know what's going to mess it up on the way there. But hats off to Ruiz. Great performance. I would love to see the rematch now. That's going to have a lot of hype. It's a lot of fun. Hey, make that money, dude. Great upset. And I hope you get everything that's coming to you, because he worked a long time to get it. See you guys later.